Okay. Uh, Good evening, everyone. Boa noite, wherever you are. So today we have Christo Goosen. I hope I'm saying right as our guest to our cast talks. Christo today will talk a little bit with us about DevSecOps. Christo, please.
Sure. Can you see the slides? Oh, there we go. So I gave this talk in Cape Town about 6 months ago. So I've just added a couple of extra thoughts because the year changed. And it's a somewhat European, almost Asian example, but everyone hopefully has seen one of the Troy movies or heard of the Greek Troy tragedy. So I just try to use that analogy to kind of explain what we do in DevSecOps. So I'll give us the introduction, sort of touch on DevSecOps, and then the challenges that you might face, tools that we use that help a little bit, and then some examples from real world problems we've had. So I'm Christo Goosen. That's a very Dutch surname. So I just tell everyone to give me the nickname Goose because I've had that since high school and it's easier. So I started in a BA information science, but a couple of years ago, I went to Rhodes University in South Africa, which had the only InfoSec masters in computer science at the time, by a professor called Barry, who's now in Europe as well, another stolen star. They called it the evil MSc because we decompiled malware in classes and did some pen testing. And it was basically a CISSP for the first couple of months and then a whole bunch of other electives and then a paper we had to write. I work for a UK company remotely as a DevSecOps lead. I've got 2 engineers working below me, and then I'm a director at B-Sides Cape Town. So B-Sides being an international non-profit conference that started because people wanted an alternative to DEF CON in Vegas. So it's B-Side. Hopefully everyone still understands a tape. So it's the other side of the tape. And then I used to be in DevOps and development as well. I used to be with my brother, a WASP Cape Town as well, but now I'm just a registered OWASP member. So I like putting this in the slides. On the left was my master's where I looked at anomaly detection with machine learning. In Linux system call logs, I was using natural language processing to detect anomalies, specifically malware that was running in Linux, compared to a data set that was open. On the right is an old crazy project of mine that was on the roof. So there was 15 GPUs at some point mining cryptocurrencies, other times cracking passwords, and just a crazy server setup. I would not recommend a 1.5 kilowatt power draw on your roof in a 100-year-old house, but we survived. My wife hasn't killed me yet for that. On the left was the data sets that I used in my master's. So it's very much text data and then trying to use natural language processing and an algorithm called isolation forest. And another one was random forest to try and do anomaly detection. On the right is my most recent successful penetration test that led to my daughter that I've been dealing with for the last 12 weeks. It's a 12-week incident and apparently a 20-year to 25-year long incident. And then as part of B-Sides, I have a project that's going on year 3, which I call Phone GPT. Slides, hold on. Let's see if it comes back. So PwnGPT was my attempt at work and at B-Sides to teach people about LLMs and the vulnerabilities they have. So prompt injection, agents doing things they shouldn't, like running code, so a SQL injection via LLM, these types of things. So there's 10 levels. I keep changing it at my own peril, you know, much like the Greek myth of the guy pushing the rock up the hill for one day a year, and then it all breaks on the day because you didn't think of something, and then the next year you do it again. But it's just sort of like a learning tool and an idea to really prove instead of just talk about the issues it might have. So work-wise, it's called Utility Warehouse. It's a 25-year-old organization that sells energy and gas and insurance and broadband and mobile. In the UK, I always use it as context because it gives you an idea of how crazy this environment is. If you're doing energy, broadband, mobile, and insurance, the only thing you still need to do is nuclear waste disposal to get more regulation every year. There's about 300 engineers. There's 2,600 people in total. We currently have 3,900. Last time I checked, there was actually 4,200 GitHub repositories, so a crazy amount of code, of which 2,100 isn't archived. So that's actual code that's probably running right now. There's 4,000 running containers in 3 Kubernetes clusters, on-prem, AWS, and GCP, and there's some Azure as well. So hence why AWS didn't quite touch us. It only touched us a third, right? And then there's about 1 million customers. It's almost 1.5 million now. So a bit of a weird, crazy environment. The previous CTO thought we were Netflix, hence the 4,000 things running at one time. It's all the microservice, break everything up into smaller parts and just run more VMs, run more containers. B-Sides Cape Town, if you're ever in Cape Town, and it's December. This year we're going to push 500 people coming to the conference. We raise about $50,000, which is amazing every year. We used to do it for free. No one showed up. We started charging for it. People started showing up, and then the sponsorship came. Most of the sponsorship goes to things like T-shirts. So we kind of joke that we're a merch company, a merch nonprofit pretending to be a conference. And it's mostly hackers getting together, talking about research and getting South Africans, and especially Africans, just kind of excited about the research that's going on in our own shores. So top left is our previous venue. The middle top image is electronic badges we built before. It's called the ESP8266. It's a 32-bit, 80 megahertz CPU IoT device with a screen, so you could play. I think someone got Doom to run on it, which was crazy, and it had sensors, so you had to network with your badge on the day. I hand soldered a lot of those. I hate soldering now. And then we thought it would be a good idea to do another badge. We're currently working on a third or fourth one. The middle bottom image is a vending machine that was controlled by Arduino. The vending machine's the green one. It was incredibly heavy, and we had to get it up 3 flights of stairs. It's the worst idea we've ever had, and I think we threw it away. And then at the top, we had Jason E. Street, who's famous at DEF CON, come down once, which was amazing. And since we've grown B-Sides, we now have a B-Sides Joburg. They've had 2 conferences already. There's an old conference in South Africa called XeroxCon that used to be something else as well. We started B-Sides Harare recently with one of the B-Sides Cape Town attendees. It's going to be kicked to next year because of sponsorship, and then B-Sides Durban, and hopefully one day we can attend B-Sides I forget exactly what you called it, but Angola for sure. Like we're not really attached to B-Sides itself. It's just a great vehicle we've used to have research and security continue. Oh, come on. I am on Firefox, which does not play well with my slides at the moment. But anyway, a lot of my career trajectory comes out of B-Sides because I met some amazing people. The current directors are like the fourth generation of people who've taken it over. It's more than 10 years old. So it started small, and we burn $50,000 a year and lots of volunteering time for very little reward, but the community growing. Let's see, come on slides. Okay, so why I use Troy as an example is there's some images historically that they think what Troy would have looked like from things that they've dug up. And what you can sort of see is there was an inner gate, an outer gate, and like a castle fortress at the top. So that kind of reminds me a lot of how we tend to build networks, and traditionally how we build systems is DMZs and low risk, high risk. Even now in a sort of zero trust world, we're still segmenting things, but ultimately, Troy, it wasn't the walls that fell or the city burned down. It was, at least in the myth, people who hid in a horse and then snuck into that walled city, into the fortress, basically into the citadel. So the kind of analogy that I'm trying to get to is that we have all these expensive and well-architected systems, but then often it's a small thing or a developer or one of your network engineers or even a customer service staff who either makes a mistake or intentionally does something, or you install a npm package and everything falls apart. So it's a trick that causes the target to invite a foe into the securely protected bastion or place. So a malicious computer program that tricks users into willingly running it is also called a Trojan horse, right? So there's an element of willing or letting in. This isn't your firewall getting popped. It's not another 40 fail vulnerability letting someone in. It is someone on the inside letting something in. So generally we tell the auditors about the amazing walls we've built, but then someone npm installs a crypto malware that steals cryptocurrencies for $67, which was a really sad take home for the last vulnerability that came out of that. I mean, they fished a really widely used bunch of npm packages. I only got away with $60, but there's been other vibe coded sort of problematic packages come through as well. So on the one end, KPMG or Deloitte or whoever else says that we are compliant, we're secure, we're ISO 27001, but then on one install we get nailed. So I mean, Troy had some challenges, right? We had insider threats. There was overconfidence in the wall, in the soldiers. Perimeter focused security. There was a lack of resources, so people started getting hungry, making mistakes. Infrastructure issues. Internal vulnerabilities, rush into a new thing. They saw this horse, they all board, bring it in, and someone gets in, and then budget. You can't build more walls if you don't have budget, right? And internal threat actors, so spies in the story. So, I mean, in modern sort of Troy or your own company, business, place where you build stuff, we all want paradise, right? So we want all the budget we could ever want. We want, maybe CrowdStrike's a bad example of the last year, but we want, EDR, SIEM, SOC, wants all the bells and whistles, and we want SendGrip paid for accounts and SSO and everything. But quite often the budget, at least especially in Africa, the one upside of working for a UK business is you tend to burn a lot of money on tools. And you hope that dev teams have shifted left, but maybe there's some CI, maybe some continuous deployment, or someone SSHing into machines and just deploying things. You're hoping people are threat modeling, so just thinking about problems that could happen. You probably have no asset register because there's no time. You hope for automated scanning, yet there's no vulnerability management. You hope there's canaries or something that's going to trip off things you didn't think. Is there some testing? You might be in a high-risk market, energy, oil, banking. I was talking to someone the other day, ShopRite, which is one of the largest e-commerce stores, chains in South Africa. And there's some ShopRites over Africa as well. And they were, sorry, I'll just keep sharing. They were talking about how many like attacks and vulnerabilities and things they had. And I said, well, you do know that that's an indication that things are going well for the company. If you're not making zero money, if you're not a bank, like the threat tends to follow success as well. In paradise, pen testers don't get in. You've got a bug bounty program. Maybe you're still in a high risk market, but nothing's happening and you're compliant, right? Do you have SOC and a perimeter right now? And is ISO even a thing that you've thought about? And are you there already, or are you doing any DevSecOps? And ultimately, I think in modern times, we all have automation and infrastructure management and tools, and we talk about continuous quality or continuous security. But a lot of the work we've done in the last 3 years at the business was mostly cultural, because we had to make a cultural shift before the tools really worked. People looked at the notifications, those kinds of things. Because ultimately, everyone has to get into the cycle, the plan, right? We have to plan, we have to deploy, continuously operate and monitor. I mean, if there is no seam, you're not going to know things are going on. If you're not looking for vulnerabilities, you're only going to find out when one of them actually hits you in the Achilles heel. DAS tools, quite complicated to set up, but we should be doing it. And then obviously we can do a lot of wins with software composition analysis, static security tools as well, just scanning our code. But ultimately, it is a way of work. We have to sort of adopt the culture, because otherwise, especially developers, they all want to be on the plan and code and deploy side of things. And then after that, security, right? Infrastructure operates, security monitors, and the customer tests, right? Like, it's not that simple. So it's the hardest part, but you really have to get cooperation. You have to get buy-in and authority from the top to really make it sort of stick, because we can all get budget and tools, but are we really doing the right thing if we're paying for a very expensive tool and no one's using it, and we're missing the notifications? We need strong leaders, obviously, because we need to push down every now and then, especially if we find a vulnerability, and then educate, which is also a really hard thing. Can a small team of engineers get to everyone, right? Like, I'm lucky I'm in a team that's more than 10 people, and that's quite rare, I think. So yeah, sometimes you also have to be the developer to understand DevSecOps, or what developer concerns are, or even be a vibe developer these days. And that's just a statement around empathy. So my team tends to build software as well. So we're not just securing software, telling people what they're doing wrong. We have to learn how to do things wrong as well, and understand code. So that leads into kind of what we did in the last year. This has changed again already, because this is 6 months old. But we built the AI prompt injection challenge. We have an internal bug bounty program based off Defect Dojo, if you ever seen that. So we actually have paid out things like, say, a Game Boy or a Steam Deck, or like a laptop or something, if someone gives us a critical vulnerability internally, right? Like I'd rather find out from one of the developers there's a problem than from a pen tester or external person. And I like saying this, it goes down well in meetings with higher ups, but developers already know where the bodies are. So just tell us where they are so we can deal with them. We have an automated PR system to add things like semgrep or depend about things checking for vulnerabilities in code. We have something called ops level, which is a operational, what do you call it, ops catalog and monitoring tool. So every microservice, as it gets deployed, a brand new one to Kubernetes, it gets put in the system and we start running rubrics like, do you have the main branch protected? Do you have a SaaS tool scanning your code? These kinds of things we can automate, and then it sends notifications to the developers. We've started working on it, but we've abandoned it again. An LM with a retrieval augmented generation system, aka documents being pushed into the LM so we can answer. A second. Sorry about the slides. So we wanted to build a chatbot for people to use for security questions, but we find that people are a little bit, what's the right term? Like tired of AI at this point. Sorry, just give me 1 second. Where is my slides now? I'm gonna have to reload the tab quickly. 1 second.
Hi, Chris. You're on mute. You're on mute.
Sorry. If it happens again, I'll try and switch browsers, but hopefully we'll do better. There we go. Then we have an identity and access management system that's based on an open source project. So even on API levels, we can check internal staff, access to systems. So that takes quite a bit of work. So one of the things I'm trying to illustrate with this slide is that we might have an abundance of time to try and solve things that other people don't. We do bug fixes for other teams, rate limiting on an AI chatbot that one of the other teams built, and even we have a dash scanner that logs into some of our pages and runs vulnerability assessment, sort of like pen test as a service. But why we do these kinds of things is we had some interesting challenges the last 3 years. One, the war in Ukraine made us a little bit of a target because of energy and gas, and our prices went up a lot, which is a pro for a gas and energy company, but not for the citizens of a country. There's like 10 people in the InfoSec team for 200 engineers and 2,600 people. It's a very heavily regulated market, especially when you're in insurance and energy. We're publicly listed. That's another target. There's lots of compliance, lots of KPMGs and ISOs. Yet, weirdly enough, the company thinks like a startup in the engineering side, which is very schizophrenic, because you're like, we have to adhere to all these like strict regulations, but at the same time go build whatever you feel like. We get fished a lot, and then the SOC just like recovered after there was no CISO and a crazy-ish build culture. CISO comes in, builds SOC. So then they hired a DevSecOps team to then sort of look at the developers because they didn't have time to do that. So one of the unique problems we also have is there's a thing we call the cashback card where you can get actual cash. So that's definitely a target. And SIM cards is always a target. Like I said, 4,600 running things at one point, and like massive volumes of requests coming in. Ironically, the US being the largest one is AWS, because every security tool is also using AWS. And if you're doing any kind of scanning, most of our inbound WAF hitting Cloudflare sort of traffic is actually scanning tools instead of customers. And another challenge we had was actually communicating to people why and what and how do we do it, right? So why do we do this? One of the projects that I worked on when I joined the company was a vulnerability project. So not vulnerability in the security sense, but frail people or single mothers or certain class of citizens. We had to make sure that the system was resilient because especially after COVID and the high energy costs, laws were passed that you can't switch off services to vulnerable people. So we have a real story to tell the developers. Why are we doing this? Why are we trying to protect things? It's not just your salary. People use the energy. It's kind of important. The what and the how is always a little bit more complicated, but everything sort of always ties back to this very marketing style word, but shifting left is what we're trying to do. After getting people to care, it's not just the how, just installing tools and stuff. And then another thing that's been a challenge is deciding when to build versus buy versus hire. For the last 2 years, we've had pretty much a freeze on hire, so it became build versus buy, and we had frozen budgets to some extent, so a lot more build, hence a lot of the software we wrote. And then training versus gamify. So 200 engineers, if I choose one team every week, I'll be busy the rest of the year just training people. So a lot of gamification helps, a little like our internal bug bounty program and some other things to actually get people to go learn themselves. Sorry, again with the slides. So we actually have engineers who've taught themselves to use things like Burp Suite or Zap just to win a prize, right? So now they've learned a valuable skill. And now we have a new challenge at Utility Warehouse is 200 engineers talking about cursor, vibe coding, all of these kinds of things, right? So when people usually talk to me about using LMs, or especially for coding, it feels like the classic scene out of Pirates of the Caribbean, if you've seen it, where he says, I know a man with a goat, good, and I know how to go like this. Because most of the time when someone says they want to use one of these tools, they don't really have a specific reason for me why they need this one. And one thing I always have to describe to people is that out of the classic AI, machine learning kind of school, we've gone to a more non-deterministic side of things, right? So as a security engineer, a WAF, a detection system, I want deterministic on the left, right? So I want a system that every time I give it this malware, it tells me it's malware. I don't want something that says it might be malware, and then I type in the chat, but are you sure it's malware? And it says, no, you're right, it's not malware. Like, it has to be clear. And the same with like these coding tools is now we're coming up with a tool that sort of hits the target, but not quite, and it might reject, except who knows, right? So I try and use this slide to just like narrow the conversation. What can these tools do, right? What can an LM or vibe coding tool do? Is it can help you explain code, can help you move between languages better than maybe a human can, generate some complex code, definitely if you've let it go out on its own. Automatic code completion, we've had that forever, but it can do that too. It can maybe help you debug things, optimize things. So for instance, Cursor now has a browser feature, so you can complain about something in your front end that isn't working. It can launch the browser, check if that's true, then try and debug it for you, right? And maybe suggest multiple approaches. It's not going to solve software engineering right now. And so that's what the developers are looking at. Then the business is looking at velocity, right? So the business wants to pay X for 8 hours. So now we see these tools coming out and they can do things faster. So the business side is saying you can do more things. So from the sort of agile methodology, you can do more story points in the same number of days. That's what they're thinking, right? So we've got this like, oh, this is going to solve my day job. And then there's this, oh, we can move faster mentality, right? And then I just like to give people this slide. So again, we're at the DevSecOps pipeline, right? Which part does the LM actually solve, or the vibe coding tool, the cursor, the copilot, is the coding part. Guess what? We've shortened the code cycle. Guess what? Now you can spend more time on planning and threat modeling and testing and all the things that developers seem to complain about they don't have enough time, right? So it is a tool that's going to help enhance, but it's not going to replace things. We still have to run static application security testing, because now your code isn't written by yourself. Now code review is more important, right? Because now we have to check what the LM that's non-deterministic has done. 2 people review it, static analysis, still have to do vulnerability management, secrets management, cloud security, software composition analysis, bug bounty, but we can do more threat modeling because we've got more time, right? And here's a real world example. So if you've heard of Replit, someone built a full application on it, and the guy told Replit, it told the LM context that we're going in production freeze, and it didn't listen, and it deleted the production database, right? So now we're outsourcing more things, and now more things are going wrong. When you get to these discussions, there's already a 2025 OWASP top 10 list for LMs and Gen AI, and even for agents. I usually get past the data model poisoning. The chance that you get to poison OpenAI's model is faint. There is an interesting paper that came out 2 or 3 weeks ago that only 6,000 tokens can actually poison a model. But anyway, the chances are low. But the things that I keep bringing up to people that we really have to look out for is prompt injection, supply chain stuff, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. We are tech people with bugs even in our presentations, right? Come on. Give it a second.
No CI/CD pipeline working.
Yes. Like a real developer, I worked on it till the last moment, right? What I'm going to try is join from my work account, because Chrome usually works a little bit better. Let's see if that goes smoother. I'll be back in a second.
Okay, Temas aí. Okay, it's back. Still on mute.
Sorry, there we go. Hopefully we won't be interrupted. One thing I specifically want to call out just on AI coding tools is excessive agency. We don't talk about it a lot, but there's a specific reason for it. You can run code from an LM. You can run tools from an LM. That means that the LM, to some extent, they prevent it, but the LM can run RM, can run bash commands, can write code to execute, to do other things, right? But getting out of the OWASP stuff, so this is what I was talking about, the agency part. Cursor actually had to add a command allow list to prevent it from doing too crazy stuff, right? So these are amazing tools, but be aware that we've now got a new sort of execute OS level tool, right? Because it's a dev tool with high agency. Another thing people don't talk about is this was at a WASP AppSec last year in Portugal, where someone found out that an LM would hallucinate packages in Python and NPM. So all you have to do is go and register the package, put malware in there, and then at some point, ChatGPT will suggest it again, and then someone will install that package in their project. Then there's the whole MCP thing, which I'm not going to go into, but these things were not designed with security from the start. Google has something called A2A. It's a little bit more close to what it should be. And then there is some like opportunity in LLMs. One that I really liked is Google did fuzzing of binaries and found 26 new vulnerabilities in open source projects. Because if it's non-deterministic, it's quite a good tool for fuzzing, right? We're coming up with random answers quite easily. So throw random stuff as tests at software. I'll skip through this sort of quickly because you can get the slides and a lot of it's in there. But things that we use, some of them are open source, so it's easy for people to use, is threat modeling. There's a game called Cornucopia. You can get actual cards from a WASP, or there's an online game. And it just makes it easy to play with developers and talk through web applications and talk about threats, come up with stories to go fix things. I'm a big fan of Things. It's a South African company, two guys one from Cape Town, one from Johannesburg. A while back, they were doing $20 million ARR with no VC. NASA uses them like very bare bones, like doesn't do a lot. All it does is you add a little Raspberry Pi or a VM in your systems in the network. If someone pings it, if someone telnets to it, tries to hack it, you get a notification. Super easy. They have an open source version of it. I have literally contributed to this project myself. It's easy to run, easy to contribute. It's a Python-based socket server. So it just pretends to be telnet SSH, and it responds in a SSH response, and then someone thinks it's a real system, and then it notifies you that something's wrong. They also do something called a canary token. That's really amazing. You can make a fake credit card and put it somewhere in a repo or in your emails, and if someone finds it and tries to use it, you get an email. I do this with scammers all the time. I send them a PDF or a link, and it tells me relatively where they are. It looks like this. It's free and open source. The website's free. You can just use it right now. So I, many months ago, sent this to a scammer. What's interesting is the Thailand and South Korea. Oh, no. Maybe it's a Google thing. AWS can't have all the limelight this week. Anyway, if you look at the Thailand and South Korea pings, what's interesting is I sent it to the Thailand scammer. The South Korea was a Microsoft corporate network ping, which means that a malware researcher or someone who was investigating an incident or who took down a botnet found my canary token and triggered it again. So it'll tell you relatively where they are, what network they were on, all those fun things. You can trigger JavaScript, and there's a whole bunch. You can even make fake AWS credentials or fake Kubernetes credentials. If someone tries to use them to access systems, you'll get a notification. I'm a big SemGrep fan. The paid-for versions are way too expensive, and the same for SNCC. But finding vulnerabilities in your code and secrets, these are great tools. I love a WASP Zap. It's not a WASP anymore, but it used to be Zap. There's a system called Secure Code Box, which you can put in Kubernetes, which automates some of it. Burp Suite, if you've done any pen testing. We use a tool called Escape, which is like reimagining of Zap and Burp for GraphQL. And then Stackhawk is Zap in a SaaS offering. It's not very expensive. It's a little bit expensive, but you can do Dast, like full-on web application scanning in CI/CD, which is amazing. We use Defect Dojo internally for vulnerability tracking. It's also open source. And then we use something called Dependency Track, which is also open source. It's amazing. Every container we build, we scan and we upload the SBOM, so the software bill of materials. So when we have an incident like an NPM package that gets compromised, we can go search in Dependency Track and see out of 4,600 things running, do we have that package somewhere? This is a more recent addition, but recently some GitHub Actions runners got compromised. And there's a great company called Step Security. They do some open source stuff and some non-paid for stuff, but they build what they call hardened runners. So just like NPM, you've got packages that everyone uses, GitHub Actions, everyone uses the same sort of actions, and Step Security takes it, hardens it, maintains the image so that even if the developer isn't around anymore, at least you're not getting compromised. And what we're specifically using them for is pushing extra configs like the Penabot. They do a hardened runner. So at the bottom, you'll see pwn request, script injection, npm package. So it wraps the entire CI/CD, and it's not just GitHub Actions. It wraps the entire process, and then network monitors and file monitors while your CI/CD is running. So one of the things that why this one failed, we passed it, but initially it failed, is we've added a supply chain rule that if a package, npm, Java, Python, whatever, we're a Golang and TypeScript shop mostly, if any of them is not more than 4 days old, we don't allow you to install it. Because what happened, we're kind of lucky as a company being in the UK, which might be a similar thing in your time zone, is usually things happen in America and there's at least 6 hours for threat intel to get out into the world. And by the time that we wake up, we know that there's a problem and we block it. But this is another check that if a package isn't a week old, don't install it, because it could be a compromised npm install that someone quickly pushed out. And after a week, someone's already at least found it, released a new version or patched it. Bug bounty, it's quite expensive, external ones. We pay 27,000 euros a year just to be on the platform, and then you still have to pay the bounties. But we found more things in bug bounties than we found in pen tests. And you could literally put up a security.txt and just ask people to let you know if they find anything. And then I would suggest running internal ones. It doesn't have to be a platform. It could be a spreadsheet, and people just put stuff in that they know is wrong, and the security team can look at it. This is our internal vulnerability. It's I forget which band reference, Purple Rain, but we just base it off Defect Dojo and we track it in Defect Dojo. But developers don't want to use Defect Dojo, so we've got our own interface. Looks like that. We track different systems and people can get prizes and recognition. We even built a risk management platform. So now those vulnerabilities we have, you can select on a risk, assign the risk to someone in the business, and now they have to deal with it. And then obviously I've built Pwn GPT so people can try it. We've used that in the internal bug bounty as well. In infrastructure, there's too many things to discuss, but we're big on Cloudflare. It saved our butts quite a lot. And then if you're in the Kubernetes environment, I'm a big Sysdig fan because actually we'll deploy to production again. Sysdig, I use them on masters because you can, it's like, what's the tool? It's like a system call log. You can get system call logs out of anything, Docker containers, processes, So it's really useful. Prowler, we scan our infrastructure with every now and then a lot of Cloudflare tunnels and stuff protects us a lot as well. Vibe coding, we're busy working on rollouts for the business, but there's amazing Cursor and Claude and whatever other rules, like OWASP ASVS, that can be applied to your Cursor IDE to prevent things. So a Cursor rule essentially is an additional LM prompt that gets put in, which kind of guides the LM to do specific things. Like, let's say you're working in Go, then you tell it only focus on Golang, or if you want to do secure stuff, here's an example of a Cursor rule where you give it secure development principles. So when you're prompting it and coming up with code, it's got additional context of what you're expecting from a security point of view. If you want to steal this, I've used this before, just around secure vibe coding, like focus on design, threat models, think things through even before you prompt. It's from my other presentation, hence the other color slides. Rules and guardrails are important, like limit the blast radius, trust but verify. So I talked about code reviews are important, static analysis, guardrails again. And then pen test your vibe coded stuff or any LLM stuff. Don't assume it's all right. And then communicating risk. So we've got this thing called ops level. There's another one that's more open source called Port, where you can get a view of everything that's running, maturity. You set up tests to check if, say, for instance, the Go version is out of date. The whole point of this is just, it's not actually a security tool, but it's something that we use to communicate risk to the rest of technology in the business, because you need metrics and stuff. Sometimes we use the OWASP ASVS, which is a way where you can sort of pen test / test with a spreadsheet whether or not a program is secure. Again, there's also something called OWASP SAM, Software Assurance Maturity Model, which is just a good language and way to test whether or not you are doing things correctly, like secure building, secure deployment, defect management. It's kind of like a end-to-end secure coding guide. And it could be simple, right? The WASP top 10 can easily be described in most languages or in most presentations or most meetings, because it's just 10 things that we need to communicate, like over-reliance on an LM or broken access control. Everyone can understand that. It's a really easy tool to communicate risk with people who don't understand security, right? Because we also have to remember that we have to reach into the business as well. We can't just be technical and just talk about Golang versions and NPM packages. And then things are going to go wrong, right? So how you respond to incidents and how you learn from it's really important. And take a breath. There'll be more NPM packages nailed. Luckily, the Americans will get it first. And then by the time we wake up, hopefully we've missed it. And then just some like sort of examples I'll talk about why DevSecOps is interesting. Internal threats, we don't think about it a lot. We had an incident where a staff member on a Chromebook, which is locked down. So we're thinking about that image of Troy, the different walls. We gave customer service staff Chromebooks because we thought they're super locked down. You can't even install a Android application because they're locked down. And someone figured out somehow to do scripting, whether it was in the browser or something, and then found a GraphQL endpoint that's not rate limited within the company, right? So within that perimeter, no rate limiting. Outside of the perimeter, rate limiting. So now we have an incident because the developers don't understand the threats, right? Because it's internal, it's fine. It's just the company staff using it. Internal, sort of external, there was that NPM disaster that they name after the Dune movies, Shah Halud, where someone used AI to come up with a really convincing email to a maintainer of packages, and then they took over the account and pushed out malware. Okay, we're almost at the end, so hopefully we'll get there. So this one's an interesting one because it's ESLint, which is quite a commonly used JavaScript in downstream build packages. So you might not even notice that you've installed it because you installed Next.js or React or something, and someone basically injected malware into the package. External incidents, so that's sort of internal, external, because it ends up inside. External AWS, we've all read about it in the news, and even Senator Warren in the US complained that Amazon's getting so big they took out half of the internet, which is a stretch, because not everyone hosts in US East 1. We had some impact here, but because we like building things ourselves, our infrastructure team built their own Kubernetes just in VMs in EC2. So EC2 wasn't really affected. But as soon as you start using RDS, Lambda, any of the sort of like you can't debug tools, that's where things really go wrong. And we were also safe because we had threat modeling exercises around using one cloud and one region. And we move things around and we have multiple environments. The cost is very high to do these things, but it's business continuity planning, right? Ultimately, CrowdStrike, we got hit with that. Again, hit the US first, and then somehow people didn't update that morning, but still some effect because we also have Windows servers, and it was on that too. Then we've all heard people already deployed an AI tool, and now security is getting called in because there's problems, right? So people actually try XSS and SQL injection on our AI chatbots that are external. That does happen. I mean, I can't go into any deep detail on any of these incidents, but just like these things happen, right? And even in a large company with a very established security team, these things still happen. So I love this slide all the time. To make mistakes is human, or error is human. To automate it is DevOps or DevOps. And to automate it is unattended vibe coding these days. And then you're also making mistakes if you're just going without strategy, because it's also going to affect the business, right? So if we just keep buying tools and installing stuff, eventually we cost the business. 1, 2, we make the developers slower. Dependabot, as an example, switches itself off if the developers don't merge the fixes for 6 months, and that happens at our business. Shifting left is culture and it's learning. It's engineers don't know these things like coming out of varsity, right? Even like very experienced engineers, and then don't waste a good incident. So AWS going down, malware, crypto malware, it doesn't matter. Use those as tabletop exercises, threat modeling, or an opportunity for change, right? Because the CEO is going to listen after all the servers been off 2 days. And don't ignore a good tool either. So even though I have been a little bit negative on the AI side, there is positives that we can use. So we've used GPT-4 with some scripts to actually look through Defect Dojo to triage some of the low-hanging fruit false positives. We still go do manual review, but if the tool makes your job easier, it's worth trying. You can always email me. I rant a lot and talk about a lot of security and dev stuff or AI stuff. I put some of the tools and stuff in here and some of the resources. I'll share the slides afterwards if you're interested. I hope you were able to follow and it was not too much ranting. But the last thing I'll say is because I've been in the dev side as well. The one thing that's really hard about DevSecOps is being a developer is lots of endorphins and it's fun because you build new stuff. DevSecOps feels a little bit like you're complaining about things all the time, right? Or security in general. So why we like building stuff as well also gives us a little bit of endorphins to keep going, because otherwise we're just going, why haven't you merged this PR? Why doesn't this work? Why did you do this? Because otherwise, like the hardest part of our DevSecOps is signal to noise ratio, because if you keep making too much noise, the developers are going to start ignoring you as well. Because if it's cultural, you can only really influence. You can't, like force things down. Developers know sudo, right? And know how to get around systems and silence alarms. And security, especially on the DevSecOps side, if you move secrets around, if you change infrastructure, things go down as well. So, any questions?
Okay, Christo, thank you. I don't know if I have questions or comments on that, but yeah, there is a lot of thinking here.
You're also going to learn a lot of reading code. So on a daily basis, Go, TypeScript, JavaScript, Python, and we once did a review. I think we found 30 languages in GitHub.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, because usually the questions, the people always try to start the first question or something, and I will say something. What are your thoughts as a DevSecOps about low codes now? Because you have all those we have now, and most companies are shifting to giving the users the ability to build their own solutions. What are your thoughts about low code?
So I have a friend who worked at a low code insurance company. So they built a platform so that insurance companies could do low code. The only problem I have with it is that your clients are very dependent on you not changing. So the Node.js versions they were running was so out of date that it was a security nightmare because they're too scared of breaking the low code side. But it does bring down complexity, right? So there's a quote, I forget by who, I think he's an old computer scientist from the US who said, no complex system started complex, right? So I think the problem is everything seems simple in the beginning, and we've all been in that place where someone new comes along and says, we're going to do it all brand new. It's not that hard. I understand the problem. And then 2 years later, you still have two systems, right? So that's one aspect to it. And then at some point, something gets so complex that we kind of need good engineering talent, right? If the business is dependent on it, at some point, you take it away from the non-engineer in some sense, just to add BCP and stuff. So I like the fact that things are getting easier so that more people can build stuff, but I still feel like I'm not out of a job for the next 30 years, right? Because it's not getting that easy.
Yeah. And you also, what do you think about low code? Because I'm sorry to put again this because what I'm seeing is, okay, it's like cloud. Okay, let me put this way. When everyone started talking about the cloud before COVID, it was everyone was saying, okay, it's going to be cheaper to move to the cloud, and it's going to be secure and everything. And now there are a lot of companies, there are a lot of people, they are or bringing down to on-prem or have an hybrid depending on the system on this. And what should be a path to another level, we are kind of downgrading. I don't know if you agree with me. And for me, the low code, it seems will be the same thing. It seems that it's to get easier, but as you mentioned, what we are seeing on the past and what we are learning, it will not get easier.
Yeah. I think the hard part, I'll use a specific example. I think the thing is, what the difficult thing is economics, right? The business doesn't want to care about Ubuntu, Golang, Python, whatever. The business wants to solve the problem that brings in the money. So low code is always going to be there, right? Or you're going to start low code. Even with cloud, right, is everyone wants to use serverless, but Amazon still has to hire Linux engineers and Windows engineers to actually make it work, right? So we're kind of going to lose some skills, but then gain more applications. I think where I have a big problem is, Replit or V0, the no-code AI coding tools that'll do a whole website. The problem is that an LLM, you're training to be a knower of all knowledge, but then also trying to limit it to get to an answer, right? So the problem is that you find the apps that people have built with that, no authentication, secrets in the JavaScript, they break easily, rate limiting is 0. So the problem is that you're asking the system to give you an answer, and it's getting to the easiest possible answer, and then at some point, you run a business on it, it gets hacked. And in a way, the low-code tools make decisions for you, right? Like, you don't get to decide which database, whatever. You're bringing down the complexity, but then you can't solve all problems. Some problems, like the Things Canary, uses a very specific Python framework called Twisted that no one uses anymore, except people who do network programming, because you have to be able to craft low-level packets and things. Most people are like, oh, wait, you mean React? You mean higher up the stack, So it's really hard problems. Like, we're trying to build everything machines. So we're trying to turn chainsaws into butter knives, kind of, right?
Yeah.
Like dynamite fishing for goldfish, using this LLM that spends millions on electricity to make you a little to-do app.
Yeah.
Like, I'm happier with the classic drag and drop low-code tools than I am with people writing one sentence and not learning how it works, right?
Yeah, I got it. Alcides, what are your thoughts?
I follow that approach used on criminology. That they say follow the money.
Yeah.
Just use the approach follow the data.
Yeah,
Okay?
yeah.
If you give the users power to build their own applications, you just need to follow the data. Which data they are able to use with that particular application, where the data will be applied to, what authentication method you allow to touch base on the system. That's something actually I was planning to ask when Christo told about the identity access management. Maybe if we employ some sort of identity access management solution, we can better govern the access to resource within the company. So when the user are building a their own application, in order to access the resource, it will need to at certain point authenticate, and we will need to give proper access right and permission to the resource that user want to use. I was discussing a few days ago with the OWASP working group on GenAI security, for agentic GenAI security. And one thing that I was mentioned was to follow the same approach that Neste is taking, which they call overlap security controls. So we already have a lot of controls. Let's say the SP 853. So why do we need to create maybe another journal of controls? Maybe we just need to overlap within some sort of agentic AI solutions or power or no-code solution with existing controls, so that we can proper manage the in and out of no-code application. Maybe I'm just thinking out loud.
Yeah.
So basically, the governance needs to be there, no
Yeah.
matter what of the if you are going to low code or no code or whatever, it seems that the governance, and I think that where most of the companies are lacking is have the proper governance, top to bottom. I don't know.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Like, the only thing that people have done with the low-code tools to help a little bit on the authentication side is use something like Superbase, which has some sensible default. But people aren't thinking about, they're thinking about authentication, not authorization, right? So now you also have a system, you log in, you can see everyone's stuff. So authorization is a really hard problem to solve. So at work, we have Okta for authentication, but then once you've got Okta, we use the Okta token to look up department, you know, which part of the business, and can actually show an example because it's one of my applications that I work on, so it's not like too sensitive. We even test. So here, for instance, is a it's not quite code or Z code. It's based on a open source project called Cerbos, but we write these sort of YAML files that say exactly this application you can create, update, read, delete this user, but another user can only read. And then you can even write tests to, so this is a test, to even test it before it goes to code, right? So testing the authorization before it's even running. So, and again, it's sort of governance, and it's hard work. It takes engineering time, people thinking through, there's 3 different types of user in the system, and it's even done on an API level. So if there's no front end, we've even implemented it in Kubernetes so that people can't stop services or create stuff with it. But we're talking like a lot of engineering time to get this right. This is not like next week we're doing this. We're rolling out. We had a previous system that didn't work well. It took 2 years of rolling it out for the new system, and then at some point the engineer decides this is terrible as well. And then for the next 2 years we're moving to the next system. And look, we haven't even solved it in normal coding. A lot of these things, like so low code.
Yeah.
You know.
Adalbert, you turn on the camera. I will assume that you want to say something. Finally, you're on mute.
Yeah, I'm supposed to say something, but now I'm trying to understand. Let me try to understand first.
But understand what?
So I come in the middle of the presentation. But I'm a little bit
Oh,
losing.
no worries. Christo, he will share a lot of things to us, but now what we the questions we are, I think that are more about his experience, his knowledge, and for instance, I just dropped that on the low code because I'm not a developer, but I'm a little bit cautious on low code, and but I would like to hear about his opinion. For instance, I could also. We have a question from Bruno. Let me hear something. But before we go there, for instance, I would like to understand from Christo. He talks about the for instance, the NVIDIA data center GPUs, the new desktop mini server that should make everything. It should be a wonderful tool, especially for developers. And
I like building my own stuff, so I'm not a big fan, right?
but let me.
That's my home server. I can pick it up on my hand. So I have a NVIDIA RTX 3090 in my PC. It pulls so much power. So the problem I have with AI at the moment is the energy needs basically excludes Africa unless you've got very cheap energy and it's stable. So we've got AWS, GCP, and now Azure physically in our country.
Mhm.
All of them weren't here 3 or 5 years ago because a cloud service rule is 3 independent energy producers
Mhm.
per location. The reason
Mhm.
is redundancy, BCP, right? Even South Africa doesn't have that. We have one that goes off all the time, right? So Amazon had to put a solar farm up and generators just to have a data center in Cape Town.
Okay.
So even these systems, I bought the RTX 3090 secondhand. It was still expensive. So these boxes, everything is too expensive for us to even get in. Like maybe a university. Has anyone seen what the price is of the GPUs running ChatGPT at the moment? We're talking like $20,000 a GPU, and you need a couple of thousand of them.
Mhm.
So where are we going to get the energy or the money for that? And
Yeah.
then we're going to be on the last of the queue. America's got orders in, Europe's got orders in, China is smuggling in. We're going to be at the back. They look nice,
Yeah.
but I've tried running local models and they're all very big. They're starting to get smaller, but they have to have very specific tricks which make them less efficient. And even then, like a small model can. So here's a question for everyone. Can you build a WAF with an LM if it takes 2 seconds to respond over the internet and it takes up to a minute to respond on my RTX 3090? Right? Classic ML responds in 20 milliseconds, 5 milliseconds. With those speeds, you can build a network device that can stop things. So that's why my research was in natural language processing, because in theory, you would have to do things after the fact. So source code doesn't move, it's in the repo. We can use an LM to scan it, but we can't do it in real time. It's just too expensive.
Okay. We have 2 questions from Bruno
Sure.
Bunga. So
So the culture shift, the
Yeah.
first thing is that I don't bother teams a lot anymore. They bother me. So the fact that they and we've got some difficult teams that don't want to listen to any advice, but over time people are warming up and they will ask for threat modeling or whether or not something's a good idea without security being asked at the end. So like, for instance, we have a AI team they will ask us beforehand, and we will do an analysis. And they actually have whole presentations and Excel spreadsheets of the issues that they think they have, and then we'll add on additionally. So I wouldn't say we have like cultural wins across the whole company yet, but teams are installing. There's a mono repo, which is 20 teams working in the same repo, so it's chaos. But they've written their own Golang code to do their own dependabot notifications to us. They've put SendGrep in themselves. The IAM project was the identity and access management project was a dev team, right? So we have security champions. We don't have to like put them on slides and like celebrate them all the time. We celebrate them in like the work that they do. Like we help them get the IAM project deployed and into teams. So I guess the overall answer is that we don't measure by the stick on the fingers. We measure by like nice conversations and like having Google Meet chats and just talking through the problems and having them solve it. At one point, I tried to do PRs myself, fix code. I did some of our own upgrades that no one wanted to do, but I only have so many hours in a day to fix stuff. So when you see other teams doing more security, here's a good one. The one team automatically applies all dependabot security pull requests that automatically get created. It just gets merged into their code, whether it breaks or not, on the development branch, because it is a development branch. It's not a production branch. So it forces them to go fix things if something's wrong, but we get security updates regularly. I hope that answers the question. I love and hate thread modeling. Because every thread modeling exercise of the team is re-teaching what thread modeling is before you start thread modeling, right? So I'm not a big fan of that. And things like documentation and planning, I don't think anyone's really a big fan of that unless you're like that's in your personality. But mostly thread modeling, because I don't think people always understand the need for it. So no one wants to keep doing thread modeling. People want it done once and tick the box. I think that in the life cycle drains my energy a little bit. Like initially when I went to study, I thought I screwed up in biotechnology and then went to tech, and I thought, you know what? Tech is dealing with computers, less people, only to realize that especially security is just all people and then tech, right?
I got it. And
question, what were the wins that gave, oh yeah, so I got that one. And then security development operations. Do you have a real life example of AI-wise, looking at areas like security development or operations? Do you have a real life example of constraints, life cycle? So I'll first start with what I think companies are doing wrong with AI. So there's a talent war and there is a investor war going on with AI at the moment, right? So everyone, man, I've made this joke so many times this week. People are probably sick of it. AI in business right now is like people talk about sex in high school. A lot of people are talking about it. Very few people are really doing it, right? So my business as well, before we actually started doing a lot of AI stuff, it was in the investor publications, right? Like we're going to have 20% efficiency gains this year from AI, and then there's almost zero budget for people to actually go do it. So you're always going to fail. when it's like that. And then we have these like superstar AI people. You know what they do is they deploy their own infrastructure. So now we're completely out of the life cycle that we built around the Kubernetes infrastructure, because the boss wants this, right? So now I can't tell them to stop on deployment because they already built it in GCP on their own VMs. So now we have to come in essentially on, let's look at, I can't remember the life cycle off the top of my head, even though I'm in DevSecOps. You have to give me a moment to come back. So like on deployment, and then specifically for AI, you will probably deal a lot with operations and monitoring, because the business wants AI tools out there so they can talk about it. And the coding planning phase happens quickly, and then you straight out into release. You're almost not testing it. Testing actually is the biggest thing. Because it's non-deterministic, usually one of the slides I had with my master's on, like those tests are mathematical, they make sense. LM testing is sort of like probability, right? It's like estimation. So people don't really test what they call evals on LM products. So it's actually quite important that you write all these test evals where you say, when I give it this question, I'm expecting this answer, to prevent hallucinations. Say, for instance, in a chatbot where it says, oh, you get 100% discount, right? It's like you want to test those things beforehand, not just someone typing and saying, okay, the AI seems sensible. But I think AI-wise, testing is skipped. And then especially on operations, you'll find that, oh, it's already deployed in a no-code, by the way. The AI team built the back end in GCP and then used the no-code front end. And then like, oh, it's going to work. We put it into the world, only to realize that GPT-4 is going to get very expensive because there's no rate limiting, no WAF. It's open to the world. It's almost like a free ChatGPT for everyone, right? I hope that answers your question. The AI thing, we're still trying to figure out, because like I've kept an eye on it, but the business was very like scared of it. And then we got a new CTO, CTPO, sorry, it's both a product and technology officer. And he is very excited about AI, and I'm on the AI governance committee. So we're in a very tough spot where we're trying to prevent things and enable things at the same time, which is very difficult. So what we've tried to do is get everyone on Gemini, because we're a Google Workspace client. And from a legal side, we already have a contract. The same with ChatGPT. We're trying to prevent people shadow AI IT, right? Everyone's got personal accounts in their own LLMs and stuff. We're trying to prevent that. And then another thing that people don't think about operations or security with LLMs, the open source models, they're open source and they're not talking to the world. But if you run an LLM, some of the models have a script, much like NPM or some Python packages, that once it starts running, it checks whether some of the weights are out of date, and then fetches more code and weights of the internet and then executes it. So you have to be a little bit careful that it's not just weights running, right? There's still code involved in getting an LM to start up. So there's a lot of nuances that you have to consider, and it takes a lot of reading to figure out all of this stuff because it's so brand new, right? The other thing is, what I don't like about where we are with AI at the moment is economics. So the cost of being a bad guy got really cheap. The last time I looked at the pricing for OpenAI, 1 million tokens on some of the good models is $1 or less, and generating an image is 30 cents. So for $5, you can run a full phishing campaign. Has anyone looked at how expensive phishing training, simulation, DMARC, decom, any of the tools that prevent these things are very expensive. So we're spending, let's say, $20,000 a year for phishing protection, and anyone in their bedroom for $5 can use the LM, even translate to it, which generate images and start phishing, right? Like the cost of defense was always high. It's even higher now.
Okay.
Okay, so I know that it's almost lunchtime on your side. I have only two questions on my side regarding your presentation. The first one is and relates to identity access management. Do you guys also deal with the authentication tokens and things like that? Because when you're dealing with the developers, they normally use authentication key or API keys. And if those API keys are saved on the identity access management platform, or if they manage those authentication keys on their behalf, on their own side, on Notepad and things like that. The second question, how do you guys? Maybe I will combine two questions in one. As the DevSecOps team is putting the things in a box is part of a technology department, security department, compliance department, or is a completely segregated department, independent department? And secondly, if the vulnerability management is part of the DevSecOps team, or part of the security team, or part of the IT team, and how to manage all those containers with the lots and lots of package on them. I think you mentioned 4,000 container maybe, with a lot of package inside, how to manage vulnerability within this kind of environment.
So the first question is, with 200 engineers and almost 20 teams, there's no one answer because everyone did something different. The identity and access management system is rolled out to some authentication mechanisms, but not all. So we use OnePass. There's a encryption system. It's a mess because no one made one decision. That's one of the problems of the company, is that there's no standardization. Then on where the team is, so we have the CTPO, then the CISO underneath him, and then a SOC and a DevSecOps team. But the DevSecOps team essentially does is almost like a consulting team or evangelism team, right? Like we get deployed to other teams sometimes to help. And then the vulnerability management. So we have on the SOC, there's vulnerability management on Windows machines, on network, on IT infrastructure. And then we have vulnerability management on web applications, containers, cloud. We haven't solved it yet. What we've tried is we have a tier system for the services. So tier 1 is business critical, like money loss, tier 2, 3, 4. So we've targeted only tier 1 to start with, because many of tier 1 services are publicly accessible as well. Tier 4 is like internal systems, like some of the things that I build. So we're trying to triage to try and get to the most important ones. The noise in the system at the moment, I think there's 30,000 for tier 1, is the use of Debian-based containers, because a lot of the vulnerabilities that we actually need to look at are in the languages that we're using and the packages. And then sometimes a Debian package that doesn't ever get used gets flagged. Something like a zip or tar binary which we never use. So we're still working on getting vulnerability management better. And then technically also the pen tests go into defect dodger vulnerability management, which we manage as well.
Okay.
Fantastic.
Before we go,
It's very chaotic, I will say, but I am my worst enemy and my greatest encourager, because I like to sail into calm seas for a day and then I want to sail straight back into the storm.
okay. Before we go, I have just one. I wouldn't say challenging, but just probably one of those weird questions. If let me ask you this: if you had to develop an AI model for DevSecOps, okay, specific for DevSecOps, what could not be? What feature? 3 or 4 features that you shouldn't miss on that. But let's say let's not say a model, but an agent, AI for DevSecOps. Let's put it this way: what feature 3, 4 that couldn't miss on that?
That's a hard one. I think, or like one feature would be vulnerabilities or package management, because I won't say which company, but a company that I've worked for before got ransomware over an 8-year-old PHP application, right? So probably legacy stuff. So something that can go through legacy code and at least not necessarily modernize it, but just get it up to a higher standard. And something that can look at running systems and just sort of improve it, because our biggest problem is that engineers like new things. So we have a lot of old things running. And I think also legacy vulnerabilities, and then like educating the user as well, because I think we also ask a lot of developers, they have to understand algorithms and databases and stuff. And they don't really understand why a MongoDB version 5 years ago isn't okay. And I think I was talking about it earlier, fuzzing or testing, right? I think where LLMs are really good is testing, because sometimes we're really bad at testing because we test to get to the answer. And sometimes you need to test, like, whoever thought cross-site scripting was going to be a vulnerability, right? Like, it's such an odd thing to happen, or SQL injection, or, you know, like the way we tested it, the way we designed it, SQL injection was never a thought, right?
Yeah.
So, like, edge cases, I would say.
Yeah. Okay. No, I'm just asking this because I think this is a lot of the complaints of AI, that the AI models doesn't just answer, is security wise. You can ask for a code, but the security by default is not there.
Well, even asking an LLM about a SQL injection, it won't give it to you, right? Like, security is such a weird thing, right? Like, I try and like explain it to people sometimes. I've got nefarious thoughts to do the right thing. I have to think bad for the good, right?
Yeah.
We're a little bit like Batman, right? Running around in a suit in the dark, beating up people, and other people don't understand it. You know, it's like a very like if someone had to design it as a job, I don't think most people would even think about it, right?
Yeah.
It's reminded me of an advertisement about a car. I think it's a French. I think it's a French car, where some designer of the car came with a woman bag and slap in the car, punch the tires and things like that.
Oh.
Yeah, I think I saw something like around those lines, where you need to think adversarially, what could be wrong, what could
Yeah.
possibly go wrong, and you need to stay always on that mind, because as a security guy, you need to think maybe those guys will come from the roof, maybe they will drill a hole behind the house and get inside. You need always to think what could possibly go wrong. Yeah.
I think
we
we
are
are
peddlers of risk, right?
Yeah.
I think as a security perspective, we are very negative, depressive persons, because we need to think the worst case scenario all the time. Period. And
That's why I said earlier, it's more fun being a developer because you're always doing the new thing, and the business can put it in the media. Oh, we built this new feature, new chatbot or stuff. But the security guy, like, hey guys, you're doing the wrong thing again.
okay, Christo, thank you for your time. Thank you for sharing this with us. Actually, it was fun having different perspectives here. As soon as you may available, we will share this. I can promise you that I will have the video available the next 48 hours, because
Don't worry, I know how it goes with conferences.
But yeah, it was a pleasure to talk a little bit with you, and share with us all this knowledge.
Sure.
Thank you again.
There's the slides if anyone wants it, and thanks for listening. I hope you learned something, and yeah, keep encouraging yourselves that even if we're in Africa, we can punch above any country's weight in security. That's for sure.
Yeah, thank you.
Bold, amazing things.
Yeah, Chris, I can't thank you enough. We have come a long way to this talk. I hope that we can meet again in CAST world in a short time, but we appreciate a lot. And thanks your wife, thanks your daughter for giving us some of your time to share with us some knowledge and some experience. We appreciate a lot.
Yeah, anytime. I sometimes joke that I look after children at work, so that's the punishment I get for saying that is now I have incidents at home to go deal with. But have a good night. I'm going to go check on the kid, actually.
Okay.
Bye.
Thank you.